Good afternoon. I'd like to bring the September 12th Pitt County DSS Board meeting to order, please. And to get our meeting started, I'd like to observe a moment of silent prayer or meditation. Okay, thank you. So first on this afternoon's agenda, public comments. Dan, do we have any?
We don't have anybody signed up.
Okay, nobody signed up for public comments.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the agenda as written.
Do I have a second?
I second it.
Thank you. Okay, moving right along here. So next on the agenda here, we have swearing in of a board member. And I guess we'll move into that. I'm not sure who and where. And
I just wonder who is it?
Miss County Commissioner.
Where you want me to go? Going down there. Just either way.
Perkins Williams,
I, Mary Perkins Williams,
do solemnly swear, affirm that I will support and maintain
I do affirm that I support and maintain
the Constitution of the United
the
States
Constitution of the United States,
and that I will be faithful
and that I will be faithful
and bear true allegiance
and bear true allegiance
to the state of North Carolina
to the state of North Carolina
and to the constitutional powers
and to the constitutional powers
and authorities which are or may be established
and authority to which may
or may be
Or-
established
or may be established
for the government thereof,
for the government thereof,
and that I will endeavor to support
and that I will endeavor to support
and defend the Constitution
and defend the Constitution
of said state,
of North Carolina,
not inconsistent
not inconsistent
with the Constitution of the United States,
with the Constitution of the United States,
to the best of my knowledge and ability.
to the best of my knowledge and ability.
All right, and I, Mary Perkins Williams,
I, Mary Perkins Williams,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will well and truly
that I will well and truly
execute the duties of my office
execute the duty of my office
as a member of the Pitt County Board of Social Services
as a member of the Pitt County Board of Social Services
according to the best of my skill and ability,
according to the best of my skill and abilities,
according to law, so help me God.
according to laws, so help me God. Thank
That's
you.
it. Thank you.
congratulations, Mary.
Thank you all. Seems like it was long this time.
Okay, next on today's agenda we have, review and approval of last month's minutes. Everybody have an opportunity to look those over.
And if there are no revisions or any add-tos or subtractions, I move that we accept the minutes.
Second.
As presented.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Minutes have been approved. Okay, moving along here. Items for report. So I guess permanency roundtable. We're going to hear from Ms. Gwen and Cindy Hamilton.
Hello, everybody. I need to talk with you a little bit about our number of kids we have in foster care. At our last board meeting, we talked about that a little bit, and you guys were told that the number of kids in foster care is steadily on an upward climb. We are trying to bring permanency roundtables to Pitt County, and Cindy Hamilton is here from Cheyenne, Wyoming, who is going to be training our social workers and meeting with community partners about permanency roundtables. Because in order for this to work, it's going to need all of us to be involved. So today, Ms. Hamilton has met with community partners over at Cornerstone Church and trained our agency staff about the roundtable process. Tomorrow, she will be working with 6 of our social workers and teaching them how to facilitate the roundtable process. Tomorrow night, she'll meet with our foster parents and tell them about the process, what their role is and their involvement. And then Thursday, she's meeting with our court partners and flying out on Friday. But today, she's going to talk to you about permanency roundtables, a little bit about herself, what the process is, and what she'll be doing in working with us over the next few days that she's here.
Thank you. So my name is Cindy Hamilton, and I'm here from Cheyenne, Wyoming. I work for Casey Family Programs, and that's where I did a lot of the permanency roundtable work. I'd like to just share a little bit with you about what I went over today with the staff and the community partners. And so I have a PowerPoint up here that I will be reflecting upon to kind of keep me focused. So when we talk about permanency, what we're essentially talking about is reunifying families safely. We're talking about legal adoptions. We're talking about permanently residing young people in a court-ordered guardianship. Or we're talking about young people, like in a tribal situation, going back to a customary tribe and becoming a part of a tribe, not necessarily a family member, but a part of the tribe from which they come. So when we're talking about permanency, we're not talking about the young people that have, in North Carolina, the permanency goal of APLA, which is another planned permanent living arrangement. APLA is a permanency goal that has been given to a lot of young people that everything else we've tried hasn't worked. Oftentimes, these are the really hard to place young people. They're the kids that have the most difficult time functioning. They're oftentimes had lots of placements. They're generally older teens, more teens of color than Caucasian. And they're the young people that are lingering in our system and they're staying longer. We're not getting them to permanency. What we know is that when young people have the goal of APLA, another planned permanent living arrangement, the outcomes when they leave our system are not good. Some of the outcomes are that they're most likely to leave from the most high-end restrictive environments and go out into the community. A lot of these young people are extremely institutionalized. They have the goal of APLA. That's what we're working on as an agency and a community. More than 28,000 young people every year age out of our system, but we're bringing in double that. And so what's happening is we're bringing in more, but we're also we're not moving the older ones onto permanency. Not most, but a good number of young people, when they leave our system because they've turned 18 years old or 21 if they're leaving your 18 to 21-year-old thing, become homeless. 12 to 22% of them become homeless the day that they leave. Some of the other outcomes we know is most of our young people, or 4 out of 10, are leaving our child welfare system and don't even have a high school diploma. So we have spent millions of dollars, thousands at least, if not millions of dollars, on these young people for therapy and medication and placement and training and mentors and all of these different things. And oftentimes, not often, 40% of the time they're not leaving with a high school diploma. The other thing is, with our young people that are in foster care, we're using a GED at six times the rate that we do the general public. Because for every young person that's in our system, when they move from one school to another school, it sets them back a minimum of a semester. They experience 7 or more school changes. That's kind of the average. So every time you have a young person that moves from one home to another home, if they're not in the same district, oftentimes they have to switch schools. In 2003, Congress came up with education training voucher funds, which meant that if we had young people who were in custody on their 18th birthday and able to move on and go to college, that we would help pay for college. And so it's called independent living funds, the Chafee Independent Living Funds. The problem that we've run into that is that with all of that money and with all of those good intentions, we still don't have more than 2% actually graduating from college. The other things, they're less likely to be employed. They oftentimes live at poverty levels. A lot of our young people know how to walk from one office to the next and get food stamps because it's what they've done. They oftentimes don't have health insurance. They're oftentimes not in a position, if they are willing to keep taking their meds, they don't have the ability to pay for the meds if they don't get the Medicaid till they're 26. A lot of times they're having children because of family. They're having children of their own because if they don't have a family, they're trying to create a family. They oftentimes have trauma. That double of some of our war veterans from being in our system and being a part of our system. Serious health conditions that are untreated, and a big number of them actually move on to what we call the pipeline to prison, which is, I know how to function in an environment where I'm told what to do and I make no decisions. So they oftentimes go on to our criminal justice system. So we can and we must do better. A big research study was done in 1998, and that's kind of where all of this came from as far as the permanency values training. And essentially what we found in that research was that when young people, it was done in New York City, and essentially we had 800 young people, 400 of them 400 ended up getting family and 400 didn't. And so they spent a whole bunch of time researching why those 400 got it and what the difference was. And it came down to two things very, very clearly. The first thing that made the number one difference was the attitude of the caseworker, and the second one was worker turnover. Every time you have a worker turn over a case or a worker leave, you usually lose a minimum of 6 months because it takes a new worker a minimum of 6 months to get caught up on the case and kind of what's going on. So we can and we must do better. And what I'm suggesting through the values training and working with all of your staff here is that I want to use this as research as an opportunity to empower workers, not make them feel like the world is all on their shoulders. What I want them to see is that they may not have control over a lot of things that go on in cases, but if they believe and if they're willing to do whatever it takes, we can and will create permanency for all of these young people. So permanency, what is it? We should talk to our young people like we talk to our own kids. Permanency means I have a family forever, okay? Young people aren't graduating from college. We're giving them all the money. We're buying them the stuff for their dorm room. We're getting their books. When family day comes around, they have nobody there with them. When spring break rolls around, they're sleeping in their car. When Christmas break rolls around, we're making accommodations with colleges for our kids to be able to stay there, but they should be going home to a family. Permanency is not a place. So I really challenge the workers and the staff today that just because a young person's been in a foster home for 5 years and it seems to be going great, if we're not able to move that to a higher level of permanency, whether it's guardianship or adoption, we need to be finding a family who is willing to take those young people. Because young people have told us over and over and over again, you never know. I lived in a home one young man told me I lived in a home for 10 years, but every morning I woke up and I thought to myself, is today the day that I'll do something that they won't tolerate and they'll put in their notice? So that's not permanency. Permanency is a state of mind. It's not a placement. So putting a young person in Children's Home Society and having them there for a period of time, that's a placement. That's not a home, okay? Permanency is having a feeling that you're connected to somebody. It's knowing that in the middle of the night, I can call them, collect, and they'll answer the phone or they'll accept my call. It's a sense of well-being. It's a sense of connectedness. It's not a place. Permanence is for now. You know, what our young people need in families at 17 and 18 years old is they need someone to co-sign for a driver's license. They need someone to let them borrow their car so they can get their license. They need someone to say, I'll buy you those Nike tennis shoes if you play basketball. They need people to support them. They also need people that are going to stand by them when they say, you're not my parent, you're not my family, I hate you, I don't want to be here, this is all messed up. And we have to be able to stand there as foster and adoptive parents and say, that's true, however, you're here with me and you're here to stay. The other thing that we have to think about is permanence is for the future. Young people don't always know exactly when they're going to want to when they're going to realize they don't have a family. Sometimes it's 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. For whatever reason, 34 seems to be kind of the age where we've had numerous young people go, oh my gosh, I don't have a family. Permanence is for all youth, even young people or people that are medically fragile or that have developmental disabilities or young people who are not even able to communicate. We have to provide families because when they move into adulthood, they have the right to have advocacy, they have the right to have guardianship, they have the right to have conservatorship, because if we move these young people without any advocacy and without any oversight into our adult, whether it's an assisted living or a developmental disability facility, they have no one speaking on their behalf. They have no one making decisions. They can move them wherever they want, they can do their meds, they can not do their meds, and there's no one there to speak on their behalf. Permanency can be created, and what I really challenged all the people today that I worked with is it's our responsibility as a system to find and do whatever it takes for these young people to have a family. So if we understand the importance of permanency, why can't we achieve it for all of our children and youth? When you look at that bottom sentence, what do you see there? Some people will say families are nowhere. Some people will see families are now here. And so what I challenge everybody to be thinking about is, which one is it for you? As the worker, do you really feel like you're willing to do whatever it takes to find this family, find a family for this child? Or is it just you're sitting back and, like Kevin Campbell would say, when we give young people APLA, we tell them, you know, we've done the best we can with you, we're just going to have you ride it out. All right? So I ask people, which do you see when you see that? So growing up in a family is a basic human right. It's not a privilege that a few people should get. Right now, we tell young people, if you would just behave, we'd put you in a family. If you could manage your temper, if you would quit behaving in school, if you would quit doing these things, we'd give you a family. Family isn't something that should be an option. We should have all our young people in families. We got to have families working with them. When I misbehaved when I was growing up, no one said they'd get rid of me. And yet when we're working with our young people, we're convincing them and telling them that if they don't behave, they're not going to be in a position where they're going to get a family. And my challenge back to people who have that thought process is, how do we know that putting them in a family won't change those behaviors? Maybe if young people have a sense of being and a sense of connectedness and a sense of stability, those behaviors will decrease. So overall, what I've really focused on for the trainings that I've done today, no young person should ever grow up in foster care. You've got about 180 young people in your foster care system here, and I think a high number of them have been in care over 5 years. It's not right for them to grow up in a system. Systems don't raise good kids. Permanency and having families is possible and achievable. It's a matter of looking at what your barriers are, addressing those barriers, and moving beyond, and not being willing to let one person that thinks that they know best for this case to stand in the way. It's challenging some of those barriers. It's meaningful, effective engagement. It's teaching people that if a family isn't responding, instead of saying they're non-compliant, how do I adjust my behavior so that they will work with me? It's owning that if young people and families aren't getting what they need, I'm partially responsible for that. It's not all on the family. We have to get where we're team members with these youth and families so that it's us working together for them to get what they need. The other thing is we need to be using a team approach. We need to be doing something like roundtables or staffings or consultations, but something where when you're sitting there in the dead of night as a caseworker, you just don't know what else to do. So we need to be asking other people to step in and say, can you help us with this case? And finally, there are specific skills and strategies and specific casework behaviors that we know lead to better outcomes for young people. In closing, I'd like to just give you a couple examples. One young man told me, he said, you know, I'll know when I have a family when not everybody at a team meeting is paid to be there. Another young man said, I wanted to be adopted when I was 34 years old by the foster parents that adopted my two younger siblings. And when they got to the court said, this time is very important. Why is it, young man, that at 34 years old, you want to be adopted? And he said, I found out today that my wife is going to have a baby, and I want my kids to have grandchildren. And so finding family forever for these young people, it's not just part of the job, it is the job. Thank you.
Amen and hallelujah.
I'd like to ask her a question.
Okay.
I mean, don't run away.
Okay.
Stay a little closer. I'm a change of life child, and so that meant that in our household, I grew up alone. But I wasn't alone, because my mother was stronger than I am. And my parents decided to sign up to become foster parents. So I had a household full of siblings. And my mother made sure that we were family. And, but what I want to ask you is, there were times when they aged out, and it was a traumatic thing for the family. What do you, because they didn't have a place for them to go. So what does this program do for those kind of children right now? Do you find a mentor? Do you find a place where they can call home and that mentor can visit and keep close contact with them?
I think one of the things that we do is we start before they get close to turning 18. We start talking when they're 15 and 16 years old of what is your life going to look out like when you leave foster care. If you're not in guardianship with a family or you haven't been legally adopted, where are you planning to go? And you know where most of them are going to go? Home. There may have been termination of parental rights. There may have been court orders that put in place that they are to not have contact, but they're going to go home. So our responsibility is to help them learn how to manage those birth parents. What I ask people and what I ask workers to do is I ask them to think about how important it is for these young people to be able to leave our system and go to a better place, and go there with the skills and the boundaries and the knowledge of what they're getting into. Sometimes families have changed and going home can be the best thing for them. Sometimes families haven't changed and it can be dangerous. So how do we give the young person the competencies to fill out a lease and get an apartment, but how do we also give them the strength and the courage and the connections that when they're behind on their rent, they have someone that they can call, that they don't get evicted, they have someone that can go with them. And I think it's so important for our young people. It's one thing to have a place for them. It's another thing to have them connected to somebody. Because, you know, when we all hit rough times in our life, we have a place to go. We can go home. And so I talk very clearly with young people. I say to them, when your world goes to heck, where are you going to go? And they'll say, well, this friend's mom or, you know, however. But I think part of what our job is to plan for that. It may not happen that they're ever homeless, but if they are, what are their options? And so I really am hoping that our young people are leaving a family now and going to a dorm room and coming home on the weekend. Or they're not leaving the family, or they're moving to their own apartment, but they're still coming over and doing their laundry at their adoptive foster home.
I can still name my sisters and brothers, and we still talk. A matter of fact, I couldn't find the one in Fort Walton Beach because by telephone we connect through the my thing of it is it is important, and my parents always gave them the opportunity to call, and 2 or 3 of them went to college because they asked for the support.
Absolutely.
And we were able to assist them. So I just wondered if you're going to do that, because it wasn't the thing of the time.
Right. And I think there's really a lot more awareness around here. And I think the other thing is, too, as we get kids in our system, we start working with them on advocating. We start thinking to the future before they're 16 and a half or 17 and a half or 18 and a half, because it's becoming very clear that we may only supervise or work with them as an open case for a period of time, but we're setting up the trajectory of their life. So is it going to be a life built on systems, or is it going to be a life built on family and connections and being able to advocate for what you need? And the work that you and your parents did is you've changed lives.
Yeah, because my sister became one too.
There you go.
Thank you. Thank you for all you do for children
You're
and
very welcome.
families, because it is family.
Any other questions for Ms. Hamilton?
I have one. What kind of strategies are you using to change worker attitudes? You
Well,
said
that's
that was a,
I was telling
factor.
the ladies here, I've done this all over the country, this training, and this is the first place that I've been to Wilmington a lot. This is the first place in North Carolina I've been where I didn't have any eye rolling. I didn't have anybody in the groups that I had this morning or this afternoon going, like, I know this. And so I said either they're really bought into it and they understand the importance of trying something different, because the way that we're doing things is getting us the outcome that we don't necessarily want. And I was very, very impressed. So I think part of it is teaching them that they have more power than they think they do. Teaching them that it's going to look different in every case, and really encouraging them to think outside the box. And if they run into a barrier, if they run into something that is is a dead stop, non-negotiable for somebody, helping them find other ways around that. I think the other thing that I'm going to really work with the staff on is teaching young people to advocate for themselves. Teaching young people to say, I deserve a family, I want a family, I know I'm 17, but I want a family, and I need you to help me get that. Because I think it's easy for us to speak on their behalf when it works for us, and then not when it doesn't work for us. It's a work in progress, but I have the utmost confidence in your leadership that they will see to it that it starts and that it ends.
Is this something we're doing now, Jane?
Ma'am?
Is this something we're doing?
Yeah, we're starting it
Currently.
now. This is
the introduction?
This is the introduction to the staff. Casey is funding this for us, and we'll be the second county in North Carolina to try and work with this. And it's the way we need to be going. It's the way we want to go.
Oh, absolutely.
This definitely helps us put that structure and that thought process in place.
If I may
Yes, ma'am.
brag on Pitt County, I was a foster care licensing placement, child protective services, the services here in Pitt County. And I can attest to Tammy Fleming, who is here and was there, Gwen, who was and is. We had foster parents in this county who I can truly say were in it for the right reasons.
Yes.
And I believe with all my heart that social workers have a gift of being able to read people.
Absolutely.
And I think that if the workers continue to be like they always have been here in Pitt, we've got a lot of potential here in Pitt. And I know for a fact that 3 foster families that we licensed back in the 90s and early 2000s and placed lots and lots of kids with, okay, their licensure has gone out and they're no longer licensed. But it was these families, and I know 3, as I said, that the children who were with them, and there were many children, still keep up and still call them and still refer to them as the grandparents of their children. So exactly what you said earlier has happened in Pitt County, and I have no reason to believe but because you got a lot of the same people, that you've got some good folks in this county to work with, and I just say it because of my experience in Pitt County, and I just think you got something good here.
Good, good. And I have no doubt that that your workers and supervisors and leadership, and we've tried it a lot of different ways in a lot of different states. We've tried working with workers first, and then going to supervisors and administrators, and then bringing in partners, and you guys are doing it so right, because in the first week, you're getting workers, you're getting partners, you're getting facilitators, you're getting court, you're getting this, you're able to get everybody started on the same page in the same time frame so that we're not lagging behind. And then there's barriers because somebody doesn't know what's going on. So you've really got it all lined up. When Wilmington said, how would you recommend doing this? I said, well, this is how Pitt County did it. So I would recommend doing it like that.
Yep.
So Cindy, what, as a trainer, will you have an ongoing relationship with the department, or do you come in and do your training and then, what's the homework? What's the
She's
ball?
gonna vacate.
My intention is to probably, in a roundtable, you have what we call an external consultant, and that's oftentimes somebody who just comes in that doesn't know Pitt County, doesn't know your policy and procedures, because that allows that person to think, well, why can't we do this? Why can't we do that? Because I don't know the policy and procedures, so I'm just brainstorming. The intention, I think, is to teach people how to facilitate the roundtables, but then to come back and help as we run into bumps or as we hit a case that we're just not sure about. I would certainly be available, you know, whether it's a phone consult or something. But yes, I'd like to stay involved.
Do you have employees that would be a resource for the counties that would, or are you talking about that Gwen and her group could choose their own?
That would be it. Gwen and her, you know, eventually you won't need me because your staff will know how to facilitate the roundtables, and you'll have people who can be external consultants that don't have to be brought in like me. And a perfect example would be you could have Brian Bachnick, you could have Christy Thompson from Wilmington come as an external consultant over here, and then maybe your people could go over to Wilmington or something like that. But there's ways to make it very, very financially feasible and very, very sustainable. And then before long, it just becomes the way you do the work.
Right. Becomes a culture.
Yes, yes.
I just say hallelujah and amen again.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very, very much. I hate that I missed the bulk of it because I was stuck in a meeting
Wow.
on campus, but thank you for coming in. And the next item on the agenda, Tammy Lewis, Plan of Safe Care Implementation.
The one problem that we had while they're getting
Sorry,
ready, the
Miss
one
Lewis.
problem that we had when they aged out was the problem of our family getting assistance for the person to go to college. And even though we didn't have all the resources, it was a fight for my mother. She fought.
When she was going to win,
Oh,
right?
you know she did.
When she was determined to win.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm going to be speaking to you all about the substance-affected infant and the plan of safe care that North Carolina has developed in response to the opioid epidemic. And so recent changes to federal legislation created a need to update North Carolina policies to address the needs of infants with prenatal exposure to substances. So we have CARA, which is the Comprehensive Addiction and Recovery Act of 2016, which is the federal government's response to the nation's prescription drug and opioid epidemic. This act also addresses various substance use disorders, and it created amendments to CAPTA. Now, CAPTA is the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act, which is one of the key federal laws addressing child abuse and neglect. These amendments required states to create a policy to ensure newborns with prenatal exposure to substances have a plan of safe care. And part of the implication is in order to receive CAPTA funding, we must make sure that that legislation is followed. So now healthcare providers have always been required to report infants who are positive for substances at birth, illegal substances. So this new legislation removes the word illegal, and so now hospitals of birth identifies the infant as substance affected based on the Division of Health and Human Services definitions. And you all can find those definitions on page 8 in your packet. And once the hospital identifies the infant as substance affected, then they're required to contact the local DSS and make a CPS report. The County Child Welfare Agency at that point will complete the CPS structure intake form with the reporter. This form has been updated to include questions around infants exposed to prescription drugs as well as illegal drugs. And once that report is completed, then the child welfare social worker will develop the plan of safe care, which is included in the CC4C referral, using only the information that was reported at the intake process. This will allow all infants and families to be referred to CC4C prior to a screening decision. So basically, before we can even make a decision about whether we're going to accept the report, we have to do the referral to CC4C, includes the plan of safe care. And we fax that information to the local health department before we make those decisions. When screening the CPS report, the substance affected infant screening tool is used, which is a decision tree, which sort of guides our process as to whether we will accept that report for an assessment or whether we're going to screen it out. Now, CC4C is a program for at-risk children birth to 5 years of age, and participation is voluntary. And the services are based on the plan of safe care, and it is to be monitored by the CC4C workers at the Public Health Department. What we did in response to this, we contacted our local health department and spoke with the CC4C supervisor, got them to come over and view the webinar with us that the state prepared in order to implement this policy. And so we were able to come up with a procedure as to how it would look like in Pitt County. So then as a result, this substance-affected infant policy created another section in the CPS policy manual, which is section 1439, and it's the substance-affected infants. And as a result, they had to update all the other sections in the policy manual. It was implemented on July 31st, and we have to collect data. Can you move? Yeah. So the data collection part is required, and that information is based on what we collect when the report is received. And so the following information is what we will be collecting at the time of the report. The number of infants born and identified as being affected by, to include the number of infants who were identified by the hospital and notified to CPS, the number of infants who were screened in, and the number of infants who were screened out. The number of infants that CPS developed the plan of safe care during the intake process, and then the number of infants for whom a referral was made to CC4C. So the state developed a survey, the survey questions, in order to get that data that we're supposed to submit to them each month. And so if you look, you will see pretty much the same questions that I just talked about. And this information is submitted to the division on a monthly basis. For Pitt County, I can go ahead and tell you for the month of August, we had 3 families that we developed a plan of safe care for. And then the numbers are the same. We had 3 families that we referred to the CC4C for services. And then all 3 of those CPS reports were accepted for an assessment, and we didn't screen out any. And so then the protocol for that survey, I call it the checks and balances, where the divisions has put in place. The county has 10 days to, we'll receive a link, and we've already got the link. It was sent out sometime in July. But that link, we're able to complete that survey, and it's to be completed within 10 days. If not done or completed at that time, then the DSS REAP CQI team will be notified, and then within 15 days, our rep will be contacted, and they will contact Jan Elliott. and then we'll have until the 20th at that point. If it's not done by then, the Child Welfare Section Chief and the assigned rep will send an email and a letter to let them know that we've not responded to this survey. And so the intake supervisor is responsible for getting this information each month, and she's developed a spreadsheet, and we're able to collect the data. Any questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
is the data collected by the drug of choice of the parents or mother?
It's based off whether the hospital has identified that infant as substance affected. So the definition that was developed, that's what that data is all about. It's not about whether it was the mother information.
Well, the reason I ask is because there's such a thrust or a public push to correct and alleviate the problem of opioids. And so if it's not reported in that manner, then we may miss what possibly exists here in Pitt County. Because I'm very interested in knowing the opioid problem as it relates to Pitt County and the sections and cultures that are involved. And then that's one way we can start addressing our problem.
Right. And this is fairly new, trying to collect this data to see just what kind of, I guess, what gaps we might have in services. So this is starting out. It could change over time because they do have a group that's studying this. And so we submit it to the division, and they're looking at, that information. So, I mean, it could expand to what you were just suggesting.
Is that something you can impact, Jan?
Well, at this point, basically, all we're doing is determining whether the child tested positive for any substance. And so, obviously, if we are accepting the case as a CPS referral, we will get further into that discussion as to what that might be. If it's just one that we screen out, and CC4C or the child care coordinator folks may or may not get into that discussion, because they could of course try to help referrals to the substance abuse clinics or whatever. So I think it's being done, but I don't think it's being captured at the point of referral, just based on the fact that all we're doing is was there a positive test, or does the mother have a history, as is outlined here.
And I guess the other thing too is if we accept that report and we do a full assessment, then we're getting information about, that family, that mother who may have that, who has that substance abuse problem, and then trying to refer them to services to treat that.
And this could be legal drugs as well as illegal drugs. So it's just want to make that clear. We're not just we're looking at substance affected children, and there are lots of things that could cause you to test positive. Mom could be on certain types of meds that the doctor's prescribed.
Scott, isn't there a program that the county is going to be a part of as it relates to opioids coming up?
Yes, on Tuesday, December the 5th, at the Ag Center from 6 to 8. We're going to be holding a opioid forum in conjunction with some collaboration partners, being Vidant, Trillium, the Health Department, the Pitt County Coalition on Substance Abuse.
So I think it may
the
be
date
good
again?
for
Tuesday, December 5th, Pitt County Ag Center Auditorium, 6 to 8 p.m.
Tuesday,
December 5th.
December the 5th at the Pitt County Agriculture Center. So the general public will know, and it might be good for someone from this to be a part of it.
I have a question. Are all infants tested, or is it at the discretion of the healthcare provider?
It's at the discretion of the healthcare provider and whether or not they meet that definition.
Okay.
Yeah. And we're going to be meeting with Vidant, the social workers there, to provide some more education and to see kind of what their criteria is too as well.
Now, I didn't think, I'm sorry. I didn't think Vidant had a social worker for children or infant.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
They have a social work department and pediatric social work. We get calls from, and Jim probably could speak more to it, but,
Okay.
Sheila could too.
yeah, Sheila too, exactly. But, I contacted the administrator over there, the social work administrator, to have her come. She's gonna come to the agency and bring a supervisor who is in the NICU, I think. And so those infants who are impacted by this, so that we could sit down and have a conversation to see what we can do better and kind of understand what their process, and so they'll understand ours as well.
Great. That'd be great. Collaboration.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions for
Thank
Tammy?
Good job.
Thank you, Tammy. Next on our agenda, the Jan Elliott
It's the Jan
report.
Elliott discussion, okay. Okay, you've got your vacancy report in front of you, and I can indicate that in addition to what you see here, 3 recommendations have been made that are not reflected on this report. So we are slowly working things down. We currently have 16 vacant positions, and at this point, 6 are in interview, 5 were advertising, 1 was a background check, and 4 they were currently screening to get the interview set up. But like I said, of those 6 that were being interviewed, 3 of those have had a recommendation made, so they're now moved into the background check side of things. So we have a large number of folks joining us. At least one of these is a promotion, so that created a new vacancy that we've got to recruit for. But and for those of you who don't know, speaking of vacancies, Kathy Parker will be retiring from the agency the end of this month, if I haven't already said that to you. So I do want to remind you of that. So that will be another vacancy. Anybody got any questions about the vacancy report? The only other thing that I've got in the way of a handout, which we laid at your table, was the Medicaid application processing. The state has believes that they have finally gotten the report correct after many, many, many months of trying. And so what you see is our progress or performance for the first 6 months of the year. We still do not have anything July or August yet. So you can see that as we knew, we had a problem with Medicaid in the month of January, and so we did not pass the report. We've also failed the report in the month of March, but only in the MAD category. We believe, based on everything I've seen, we've passed the report every month since, or at least based on the information we can acquire. And we're now getting weekly feedback, the supervisors are, so that they can tell where they stand. And again, we haven't gotten the monthly reports, but we're not seeing that we're going overdue. As far as the application processing time by month, as you can see, we have been below the maximum standard in both areas consistently. And if you remember, you have to pass all 4 of these areas to pass a month. If you miss one, then you have failed. And as a reminder, if you fail 3 consecutive months or 5 months out of 12, then you go into corrective action. So at this point,
Where are we?
we've got 2 months that we have missed.
January and March.
January and March. So we're now working the 5 of the 12. We're moving the 5 of the 12, and hopefully we will never get there.
Okay. 'Cause
Okay.
we're in month number 9 now.
We are, but again, we don't have July and August figures yet. We do not believe we have a problem for July and August based on the weekly things we're now seeing, but we have not gotten the official reports. So we believe we're good. Now that 12 months is a constantly rolling 12 months. So it's not like a January to December. You're constantly doing the count, so the count's rolling
Oh,
forward.
it shifts.
It shifts.
Oh, okay.
Okay. We feel good about where we are right now, and believe we are staying where we need to be. I did want to point out a couple of things in child support. You don't have anything on that, but a couple of our child support staff, our supervisors, were elected to the Child Support Council and on their board of their executive board, or to serve as chairs of various committees. So we're real proud of them. And in fact, we had a shout out in the month of July that one of our folks, Christina Carter, collected $37,307.60 off of one collection. She got a Social Security lump sum for children. So that was number 3 in the state. So we're real proud of how she got that done, and have thanked her greatly. Don't know if you all have any questions about the director's report that I sent to you earlier. Again, the child welfare work continues. We are getting more and more children from the juvenile justice system, as you heard said, we have about 180, and we believe there will be more coming in this week. Based on, we got 2 folks today, so we believe those numbers are going up. So we are very excited to be working on permanency roundtables. We made our child care payments out of NC Fast for the first time in September, and it was panic time for a while. But we believe, based on what we are hearing from and I'm looking at Michelle back there, based on what we're hearing from our child care providers, everybody got paid. If there was like maybe one child that got missed or something for some reason with the voucher got hung up in the system or something. So we believe all of our providers were paid what they were due or pretty close to it. So they will not get the difference until the next month, because they don't write multiple checks. So, but we got through that. Crisis intervention, you may or may not have seen me on TV, but I have explained crisis intervention in here. We had a problem. Again, they went into NC Fast. That has sort of slowed things down. We had a significant number of folks showing up needing crisis services during the really hot months that we had. And with the new system, we were doing applications offline in order to move people out. We were just doing paper applications and then keying them later. We were issuing the promise to pay, but somehow things weren't getting keyed timely, so checks weren't getting cut timely. And so some folks inadvertently did get their electricity terminated. GUC was very kind and is not going to charge us the reconnection fees. They are working with us. We believe we have got all those caught up in place, and we some things in place that we're hopeful that will not happen again. We do have a couple of our retirees back helping, trying. The weather should help us some because it's not extremely hot right now and it's not extremely cold. So the volume of people who are going to be eligible are going to be reduced, because now it would have to be for a medical reason to qualify. We may bring in a third retiree to help some, depending on how things are going. That's kind of in process now.
Do you know what caused that problem? Do you know, was it the speed of the system or what?
Well, we were having trouble initially just keying, and when you have 90 people or more coming in a day, and you have 4 or 5 people trying to do all that, plus it's slow because of the new system. There were some problems with staff and how they could get through that system. Some of it were system issues. We got behind. So, like I said, we started moving folks into just, let's get the application, let's get the information, we can do the promise to pay. But now, GUC only holds that promise to pay a certain period of time, and then it will drop off, and they'll be cut off if you don't get the payment made in time. And so we just got overwhelmed. We have one person out on FMLA in that group. We have one that's out intermittently. And so when you have a small staff like that, you know, but the issue was to try and get the folks in and out and make the decision, because we felt like that, and get the promise to pay. So now we think we've resolved the issue so that we can track. And GUC is also helping us track. We also reached out to all the other providers to make sure that there weren't some issues there that we had missed. But, you know, the biggest volume's GUC. So that, I did want to explain that because the TV station did ask about that, and we were on TV for that. So basically, those are some of the things that are going on. We are thankful that we did not have a hurricane.
Oh, I think we're so blessed.
Right, and we hope that continues to not happen. So I didn't know if anybody, I'm not going to go over any more of it. I didn't know if anybody had any questions that they wanted to ask about what I had sent or any of the things that were coming up on that. If not, the retreat, we have January 9th. That's our regular meeting date, and we did not have that put on here yet because we were still working on it when Susan did this. And we got, Susan, where did we wind up? Human Services building, which will be room 145, the conference room in Human Services. We'll put this on a future calendar for you.
What is that?
Government Circle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the question that we've got is, what time of day do you want to start this retreat? 1, 2? I'm thinking you probably want to meet for 3 hours or so, or less if we can, but it may
All
take.
I ask is that as soon as you know, let me know so I can put it in my calendar, because, you know, have little calendar issues every now and then.
In the past, I think we've started about 2, and run to 5 if we need to, but hopefully we won't need to, just depending on, because I think the bulk of it, besides what you all want to talk about, would be the strategic plan and what we put forward, how you want to be involved in it, any additions or whatever that you may see.
Dr. Bunch, that's before classes start in the new semester, so timing
okay.
isn't an issue for you?
Yes, I'll be okay.
Is there a time that works better for everybody else? I'm all about going ahead and putting it down, because I'll get scheduled into something.
That's what I was talking about.
2 o'clock's fine, that gives us 3 hours.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Okay, we will have this on your calendar officially for the next meeting, so you'll have it, so you can track it.
It's going to be January 9th.
January 9th, which is your regular meeting day. Thought it would be easier to try and do it on a day you're typically used to coming.
That's right after county commission meeting.
The upcoming events you see there, wanted to let you know when we were closed in case you might need us. Anything, anybody else? Any questions? If not, I'm through.
Okay, any other questions for Jan? Then any board member comments?
I have none.
I have none, since everyone is speaking at one time.
Okay, so with that being said, then
I move that we adjourn.
Well, first, our next meeting is October 10th, and then we have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye. A great meeting.
And I am sorry I got double scheduled at ECU.
I think we should thank our guests for, and